found this really cool metal mesh product. It's used in construction to do stucco support, so you might find it metal stucco support. Somebody else called it maybe diamond lathe mesh, but I wasn't sure about if that was only reserved for higher grade, you know, really thick metal mesh. This stuff is very bendable. It's galvanized steel, it resists rust, it's a great product. The other, oh, by the way, 27 inches by 8 feet for $18, that's amazing. Okay, so get a lot of bang for the buck. The thing I planned then to make it stiff with is epoxy sculpt. Now some people use those for outdoor purposes, but I never would. I think they'll probably crack just like outdoor plastic chairs. Eventually it cracks. When I do mosaic on a project, I want it to last pretty much my lifetime, you know, at least 20 more years or whatever. So, maybe 30. So epoxy sculpt is a 2-part clay. I did bring some. If you want to see what the packaging looks like, it comes in natural, it comes in black in this 4-pound size, which is 2 plus 2 pounds. And it also comes in smaller sizes and different colors. But I suspect you could add a pigment to it, like a dry pigment to it, and make it different colors. I haven't done that yet, but that's on my list. So that was my 2-part process. These 4-pound packs cost about $50. So, you know, you don't want to use a lot of it. So when I'm doing something over the mesh, I want to get it thin and maybe layered so that I don't use too much of the product. But I buy it usually 4 pounds at a time.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Does it dry out very fast?
About an hour and a half working time.
No, I mean in the container. So
I've had this for over a year.
okay,
And it's starting to look kind of crummy. And so probably you should use it within a year, I'd say, just to be safe.
and you can put that over the surface of concrete or anything.
Yeah, actually I used it to fix my sister-in-law's back gate. It had a little broken piece in the plastic fencing. It was kind of, so I just took a lump of it. And, so it's great for fix-its.
Oh, good.
You know,
Okay.
keep it around your house is really great. Okay, so at the beginning of the journey, I was playing with some cardboard and I made what I thought was really a cool thing. I love the Mobius strip. It's a mathematical thing. You take a strip of paper, one twist, tape it together, and then your finger can trace a continuous surface, and it goes on both sides, the inside and the outside. You can practice with this if you want. So I had the thought of making it into a heart shape. So clearly I would need a piece of bendable mesh, just a long strip, and bend it into the shape, and hopefully attach some glass to it. So rather than making the thing hard to begin with, I actually used the adhesive properties of the epoxy sculpt and glue on the tesserae. That was a big mistake. It's so messy and it's so gummy, and it wasn't hard yet, so if I bent it a little bit, the piece would fleck off. So great experiment, won't do it that way again. Let's see. Oh, when I'm testing, you know, will it stiffen it up and all? I make little samples like this. I call them mock-ups. You'll hear a lot about mock-ups. It's kind of an engineering term. You don't say that ever in your art stuff? Okay, a little bit. Okay. So, yeah, just to make sure that it got hard enough that the pieces wouldn't come off, and then I could actually insert the pieces in it. So I would do a little piece like this to start with. My next experiment was with a boot. I was making a boot for a silent auction item for my junior high, where I was a STEM mentor for their fundraiser, their ISD fundraiser. And I filled the boot with newspaper, I filled it with concrete, but then when it came to the opening, I didn't want to close it up and make it solid. I wanted you to be able to look into it, and I had the idea of putting a mirror in the middle of it. So I made a template and cut the metal mesh in the shape of the 2 sides of the boot. I lined the boot with that. I applied the epoxy sculpt. This was a much better way for me to create a mosaic surface. And then you can see on the far right over there, when it's dry, I have a nice flat bottom. I've got the sides, everything's protected, it's all nice. And then it came out great, and I thought it was really cool. You could look into it's like looking into a heart. So that was really neat. I really enjoyed using it that way.
What did you put inside the boot, down the
Some
toe?
concrete, some newspaper. I stuffed it as tight as I could with newspaper. And then to make it look like it's pitching forward, I had to get the weight centered about the center of the base. And so I wanted to look like it's on its toe, and to do that I kind of front loaded it with concrete to make it.
How heavy is it? Is it heavy?
The actual boot for the
Yes, I use the actual boot.
So, will it deteriorate like the leather? I mean, what is it?
This is an indoor only item,
Okay.
so I imagine it deteriorates as much as it would in your closet.
Oh.
So,
Okay.
you know, and the concrete doesn't eat it, you know, to my knowledge. So I guess we'll find out. 20 years or whatever. Yeah, some shoes are not, I wouldn't do it on a rubber shoe. That rubber just disintegrates over time. So more questions on that? Okay, we're really focusing here on the metal mesh deal. Okay, so I'm asking all my family members, is there something you'd like me to do for you? And my niece comes up with, she has a ton of pets. She comes up with this idea of doing a pet of hers, and I'm figuring if I do all my early art pieces and give them away, then my best stuff will be able to be sold later, and I'll have checked all those boxes. It's kind of a funny way of thinking of it. But anyway, I noticed she was posting a lot on her family chat about this bearded dragon named Charlie. He was just inspirational. He had so much character. He played with their pug, he played with their cat. I liked the pose on the remote up high, I thought that was fun. And by the time I got around to deciding what I was gonna do, Charlie had passed away. So I thought, you know, how could I make this meaningful, not just looking like Charlie, but helping them to remember all these fantastic memories. So I came up with the idea that I wanted Charlie to be looking back at them and reminding them of all the happy times they had together. So here we've got the beginning of my process. So once I've decided on a project, probably like you, I gather a whole bunch of images, information. I'm not going to copy any one of these, but if I do find something I need to copy, of course I need to think about who owns the rights to this photo or that. So I'm staying away from that, but I'm using it as information like how do I do toes, or what kind of pose I choose. I think the one in the middle is actually Charlie, or it's my friend's bearded dragon, Einstein. And so even down to looking at what does lizard skin look like. I don't know about you, but when I start thinking of how to do something, I need to fill myself full of information. And then out of that, I can take and leave some stuff, but I have a part of me that really wants to get it right. And I don't want to waste time getting it wrong. And so that's what I do. Close-ups of any detail, even the wrinkles on the skin, that was inspiring to me that I could make it look more lifelike if I added some features like that. All different sides, underneath the chin, you know, the back end, tail, etc. These are just a few of the images. And I didn't restrict it to the bearded dragon. I went ahead and looked at these iguanas too. I found them kind of interesting and similar in their shape and sizing. So this is kind of a picture I found, and I reversed it because I like the pose where he's looking back this direction. This picture then helped me to look at proportions. I'm sure you do a lot of that also. You see an image and you're like, well, how's that critter made? Well, he's made in this many parts, and in my case, instead of measuring inches and centimeters, I just used something convenient like the head. And I think, well, the head is 1 head length, and the body was, what, 3 head lengths, and then the tail was 4 head lengths. Hey, the head and the body were the same length as the tail. That just blew me away, that he was gonna be twice as long as I originally thought. So, because he was so skinny and long like this. But that's how I break it up, and I even drew on this image so you could see kind of how I break it up. Now this is important with your metal mesh because before you start any cutting, you really want to know where your cuts are going to be and get the proportions right. So there's a lot of upfront preparation, maybe a little bit of math in order to do that. So the thing I started with was this kind of wood heart shape that I had bought from somebody, and I really liked it. And my thought was I'd kind of have it curling around that. Well, by the time I decided I wanted a life size, you can see he's way too big for that. So, let's see. So the cuts on the rectangle of the mesh, that's the thing I'm going to be showing you and then demoing the folding and the making of the form. Okay, so this slide basically says, and a miracle occurred, and now we see a form. Okay, so you're going to get in on the miracle with the demo after this part's over. So let's see. Oh, my new wood now was a piece of driftwood used by a friend's actual bearded dragon, so I was really excited about that. I wasn't sure how firm it would be, if I'd be able to actually bolt something to it, but it turns out that its driftwood is surprisingly hard, or at least this piece was very surprisingly hard. I thought it'd be soft and might break up, but it worked out okay. What else do I have? Blue tape. Blue tape on the toes, and the tail says, let me get back to that, but let me not get poked by it in the meantime. So I pretty much saved those pieces for later. Yeah.
Did you treat the driftwood with
No, I didn't. I think I kind of brushed it off, washed it a little bit if there was mud, maybe sprayed it a little bit with some cleaner a little bit because I knew it had been with a live animal, but no, not really. Yeah. Any other questions on that? I have my pasta machine, which you can use only for clay now, and I run it through and I make this epoxy sculpt 2 parts. I make a ball of it and I run it through the pasta machine, and now I've got some skin, and I can paste that skin in different forms and it begins to come to life. I think the important thing I learned here was don't do any joints that you aren't ready for them to be hard in that position. I did have to even break some joints or cut through the epoxy sculpt in places that maybe had become firm and I needed to bend them a little bit. So you can see I didn't do him completely. On the right side, you see the length of the bolts, they were like 4 inches long. They go all the way from his belly, which was, I sort of got it from his back here, through his belly, and then through the driftwood like this. And then I bolt him on the back. It shows on one of the last slides where the bolts come through for you other nerds who like to know how things are done. Picture of it, where I actually started smiling about this project. Because the funnest part, honestly, was making the form. After that, it was just a grind to cover it, honestly. But I was smiling when I started liking what I saw. And I'm sure you've had a similar experience. I had some, what do you call that? Italian, on the back, I had a bracelet, and it was made with this Italian glass with the metal spun through it. Oh, it was so pretty. And I clipped those beads in half, and I prayed that they would be right, and they weren't. So he got these little spine treatments, and later on I added frills. You can see a little bit of glass. I was almost afraid, up here on his chin, I was almost afraid to, what kind of glass could I put there? In the end, I made epoxy sculpt. I made these really big frills. I mean, he's decked out. And so I really enjoyed that part and adding color and interest to the project. So here's a detail. I told you the details are so important. When I finally did get to the hands, I made this little bitty hand, and I saved it because it's kind of cute. And I could see doing more like that, like me, or out of a box, a Halloween kind of thing. But I noticed as I was working with it, the ends of this wire are so sharp. So I put beads on the ends, and then I covered each finger with epoxy sculpt, and you can see kind of how it turned out. I actually wrote some mica powder into it also while it was wet, so that I could get a a really nice look to it. But I think this is funny. I like how-to stuff. Here's my wires. Put the beads on. Make this many fingers.
Thank you.
Balls, all about the same size. Roll them. Apply to each one. Done. So that's just kind of a funny thing about the feet. So now you get to see the glamour shots. Okay, a real bearded dragon. Charlie are my friends. The Charlie looking back pose I was after, and the finished project. Let me tell you, when you have a big project and it's got a lot of detail, it does not photograph very well. So I provided you with some close-ups. These are glamour shots. He's got beads everywhere. One thing I point out to make him look realistic, around his mouth, I noticed on some of the photos they have this little square scale thing. So on his mouth I had a little square, rectangular rather, beads that kind of went out to define his mouth in a little different color. I noticed the hood on their eyes, so I made sure there was a little hooded part.
Wow.
There was some undulation here to represent kind of that breathability, life. What else do I see? Oh, the far picture there, you can see the big frills here. And I really thought those were so cool. I really like that. I knew I did well when my brother, who's an art professor, said, "Where did you get that form?" At a taxidermy shop. And I was like, he's not gonna say, "That is nice, good job." He's gonna say, "Well, where'd you get?" But when he told me that, I thought, yeah, I nailed it. So I love this back foot. The way. And this is where I had to break one of his legs because right up here, it wasn't bent the right way, so I had to break it and re-epoxy it and fix that. So that was, I did that fortunately before the beads were applied, so that was good. But his treatment goes all the way down the tail, and then I put a little bead at the end of it. You can see the tail there. Glamour shots. Here's the back side. Like I said, for you nerds who like engineers, how do you attach it? It's wired. The two bolts are slightly off so that we're not trying to poke at each other, but we're crossing like this. And I really appreciate when an artist has taken time to have a really nice back treatment. And so you'll see here, I beaded the back side. Nobody's ever going to look at it. I could have painted it, but I wanted him to be able to be removed from the wall and turned every which way and looked at. So that's what I do, and it's something to think about. You know. Yeah, so I created some new techniques that I'm glad to share. But the beads, I started off thinking, okay, I don't want the beads to fall off one at a time. So stringing them was a good option. Also, when I had that thrift shop bracelet, bead netting piece, I didn't want that to fall apart. So I actually covered one side with well-lined glue and I put it on top of plastic paper. When it dried, it was like bead cloth. I could just cut it any shape I wanted to.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, yes.
Good idea.
So then, not only was I doing strings of beads, but I was actually taking strings of beads, putting them next to each other and making what I call bead cloth for the difficult areas where multiple colors were needed. And then another thing I did for integrity was, by the way, stringing, I'm doing this on fishing line. And so I leave little bits of fishing line at the ends of these little lengths of beads, and I would fit them one end into the other so I could continue a line of beads. It would look like a really long line, but it was really segments that were fitted in like this together so that, you know, everything holds together as well as possible. The pieces aren't falling off. Anytime you work with beads, that's a huge issue. And so, yeah, that's what I did. Good question.
How long did all this take you?
Everybody asks that. Two people ask that about your art. You say, well, in 1972, I began my artistic journey. She's so great. So, truly though, I don't work one project at a time because I get bored and I get stuck. And so I like to have several. And so I think my oldest pictures when I started collecting information, it was about 2022. and I completed him to give him to my niece this summer. So, you know, off and on over that period of time, usually spurts and fits. And then hurry up toward the end where I'm, oh, there's a show or there's a, you know, whatever. So I actually think I finished it the year before. So maybe about a year total, because I think, it was in the Rockwell Art League show last year. Yeah. And so if I gave it to him in the summer, it was this summer, it was already completely done. So yeah, a year or so, at least 9 months.
How do you know, taking that long, how do you plan for the right quantity of the right type of beads and all of that so that you don't run out before?
That's a good question. And for this project, to avoid that problem, choosing a color that's available at my local store so I can go to the supply. So a lot of it was this bronze, okay? And then like that one thrift shop bracelet, that was one of a kind. What am I gonna do? So I have to cut it into shapes and plan how many of those am I gonna do and how am I gonna continue that all the way down the tail, for example, because I ran out. But with a symmetric kind of design like this, at least get it symmetric where you want it and then switch it up. You know, it doesn't always have to be exactly the same. This wasn't a project where I was restricted in what I could use. I could use anything I wanted. So I just want things that kind of fit. And so I used mostly the bracelet parts up toward the torso, a couple on the arms when I found I had a couple pieces left. I really liked this kind of treatment here on there, but a lot of bronze. And so it was used primarily as accents. And the bronze were available like hot. Two sizes of bronze, some bigger ones and some little ones to get some of that nubby cinch, but I put them all on the same fishing line so that they could be interspersed. That's a great question. Yeah, and if you run out of something that you start with, it's like, uh-oh, what are you gonna do? So yeah, that's an engineering kind of question. I love those. Anything else before we move on to your part? Okey-dokey, so let's see, I don't done, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut those two. You'll see how easy or not it is. I'm going to use the aviation snips, is what they're called. You might call them metal snips. I'm going to cut those two pieces. And sometimes I use the bottom of the table. Oh, I know what, I promised I was going to put something under it. Nice to protect your surface. I want to scratch up a bunch of pretty computer tables.
I'm gonna go over there and see if I can get her.
My snips are kind of sticking. I'm sure there's a product to keep that from happening. Between doing my turtle mock-up, which is the cardboard form, and doing this, I decided to make these cuts angled cuts instead of straight in, because I reasoned I'd like a little bit more defined shape off the shell to make it easier for myself to do any of that kind of thing. You want to pose like this?
Yeah. Is your hair done right? You want lipstick?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
No. Quick, I gotta turn it over. Okay. I'm gonna, oops, keep that on there. Yeah, I never used the tape like this before. I really like it. It's pretty cool.
So this is not the fun part.
This is not the fun part. This is not the folding. That's the fun part. This is when it starts to actually look like something. And that's our hope. Like I said, I've not done this. I only did it with cardboard, so this is just, you wanted a demo, I'm gonna demo.
So do you know what you might use on that turtle as the mosaic parts?
Yeah, I've been thinking, I got a ton of plates in my garage, so I'm thinking I would like to use some of those plates, and I'd like it to be an outdoor. I'm investigating a product called Paltia, which is an outdoor moldable concrete. And I might use Paltia, but that might make it a $200 project as opposed to a $50 project. So. This a little expensive.
Yeah, but you could sell it for 1,000, right?
You never know.
Yeah.
So don't make your cuts too deep. Maybe this one just a little more to match the other one. You can snip from the top as well. Let's see. All right, let's get going. Okay. I'm gonna keep those handy. Got my handy dandy needle nose pliers. I actually have a pair from, I think these are from my grandpa. You ever use tools that you just love because they're from somebody or you used them on a certain project? I'm like that. It helps keep me going. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do, ta-da-ta-da, I'm gonna make a spot in the middle. Right there. This is gonna be a leg. That's gonna be a leg. Get them out of the way, Joe. I think right about there was the tail. So your needle nose pliers are good for making like places, undulations, because you can kind of twist them that way. Yeah, I'm interested in what I look like doing this. Okay. That's okay. I think I got what I want. That's all looking really good. I'm gonna use the bottom shell, has the legs. That's gotta be a little smaller, so I'm gonna use that to make the skin on the side as well. But the top shell, I thought about this. I need something to kind of curve it, so I think I'm gonna start here and just kind of do a little bit of a curve line. We once rescued a turtle in the middle of the road. We called him Curvel because he was the curve of the road. And we were rescuing him the same time as somebody else saw him. And I felt like I was part of a big deal because Curvel was rescued that day. Alrighty. Let's see, I do need a bend here. You can also do this with it. I do need a bend there because I need to show the edge of the shell and the beginning of the tail, right? So I'm gonna go. So this is nothing fancy at all. This is just me doing my thing. I'm trying to get just a little thin area where that tail comes in. So see how made this is, I love this. This made a little area like for the lip of his shell. Now, for mosaic purposes, I'm gonna have to flatten that, some of that area out. But if you don't mind, I'm gonna sit down now and this will work better. Pretty much, I'm gonna turn over all the edges. You can have fun with your cardboard, and if you need a Band-Aid, just let me know. It'll be interesting to figure out how to join this top shell to the bottom. That is kind of an engineering problem I haven't figured out.
Did you sew it together